want to speak just a moment because I'd love for us to hear from each other about love gifts in our lives that have stuck with us. We'll have the chance to hear from people online and people here in house in this week, indeed, of Valentine's, but also deep illumination on Transfiguration Sunday. Often Transfiguration comes the Sunday before Lent begins as a reminder of Jesus' time and the gift of his presence with them, but that it is a temporary time. That is, it is fleeting. It will not last forever, or will it? When we think about the Spirit of Christ that remains with us, how do we hold the tension of the physical, fleshly being that was Jesus walking and being with his disciples, and the end that it had its course, just like we in our humanness and our fleshiness don't live forever? How do we cherish these moments that we do have? How do we treasure and trust that God is with us all along that journey, and that we indeed are not alone? But there is an importance of an aloneness in this scripture, both because Jesus gathers particular disciples with him, and it said they were going off by themselves. They were going off alone, monos in the Greek. And then after Jesus has made the appearance with Elijah and Moses, can you believe it, how scared that might have been, that feeling? Who are these persons? How would they even know who they were? I'd like to joke, was Moses there with the tablets? Were they kind of in hologram form, doing a little bit of a Star Wars experience and say, honor thy mother and thy father, that's Moses? Or was it just apparent in the way that Moses related or was there, that the ones of their deep Hebrew tradition and scripture, the ones who had been prefigured and those who had told of the love of God with and amidst the people, the liberating love of God, are there with Jesus because Jesus is also liberating love. As Anne said, they are going to need this message of love, this love gift vision, because as Mark tells us over and over again, the suffering is coming. As we begin Lent, we acknowledge not only those days in the wilderness, those moments in the wilderness Jesus had to take to face what was coming, but time and time again, he tells them, there will be 3 days, and I will die. And the question will be, how will I remain with you? How will the spirit of the ministry that we have shared together live on, hand to hand, love to love? And so there is this glorious vision before them to remind them time and time again that they are not alone. This vision of resurrection that will be transcendent not only for this Jesus whom they are following, but also for themselves on this journey, for the disciples too will deeply suffer. But time and time again, as they think back to this mountaintop, maybe they're in prison or traveling deep as Paul did on the journey later, perils falling behind them, ships having to cross at great distance, trying beyond everything to share that love that they knew. And before them, like a vision of hope, they could imagine again this mountaintop, and Elijah and Moses and Jesus all shining the way forward. Now, in our more mundane existence from day to day, perhaps there are not shining moments of which you have been struck by Jesus in the same way. But maybe you have. Maybe there are ways in which the glory that is shown upon a stranger or beloved's face has revealed to you the glory of God in the here and now, so that when you most need it, it is a love gift that comes to you and shines before you and gives you the confidence you need to keep on going. We can be in a large crowd, friends, and sometimes feel mightily alone. There are ways in which that we need ongoing feeding and assurance that we are on a path of God's love. You can be lonely even if you're out in the midst of a protest and protesting. Maybe you don't feel like there's anyone sitting alongside you in your particular stance or position. You can feel lonely, as many often do when they leave home for the very first time for college and they're living in a dorm surrounded by lots and lots of people. And yet you can start to feel that nobody gets me, or I miss home. Maybe some of us know what it is to live in a big city or a big place, and you're surrounded by millions of people. And yet still somehow getting up and getting going is a challenge. Now, I was thinking about an illuminating glimpse to share with you because I want to hear your glimpses this morning. We benefit from them in community, but messages and visions when you needed them that continue to feed you. So I was running this morning, and it was a little gloomy time, but there is a little path that I take sometimes, and I came across it, and it was completely still had all of the dead decaying logs. That's what it smelled like, was decaying logs. We're kind of in a season of decay in that regard, right? The snow has melted and the things have come to fore, and they have to decay in order for new life to come about. But the green vegetation hasn't yet come about. And so as I was running and feeling the heaviness of my spirit, I thought back to a time when I first started running in pandemic, and I came across this spot for the very first time. And friends, the sun was out that day. And I felt overrun from being with my kids and just needing a little snatch of some kind of minute. For even though I was with them all the time, for 6 months, I sometimes felt very much alone, very isolated. And when I made that turn, there was like a cabbage patch field of green and verdant growth. And I remember it was May 2020. And I felt such an affirmation of the Spirit as the sun came down on that growth, and thinking it will grow again. I don't know if you remember that time when the spring was glorious that year. It was glorious. And it felt so discordant from a lot of our own experiences of isolation and uncertainty. And our hearts, how did they even hold that beauty? But somehow I was able to hold that beauty then. And now every time I turn that corner, that sense of illumination is with me. And I trust that there are stories out here that we need to hear from one another that are ongoing love gifts that the divine has put in our path that we keep finding in our inbox because we need them on the journey to know both that we are not alone and because this world is continuing to bloom with us in it. We suggest that this is a powerful and important part of our lives, no matter where you hit it seasonally. And that also in glory, with that glimpse of resurrection that the disciples have, that we don't have it all make sense for us now. We're not going to understand every little piece of this journey that we have. But we trust that when we come to the end of it, that it's going to be a glimpse of those moments of this shining in which our hearts will be made one in the Spirit. Please take a few moments now. Perhaps you're thinking of a moment that has particularly shined on your soul and heart. Maybe it has to do with a person in your life, but maybe it has something to do with finding comfort even when you're alone. Take just a moment now. We'll have opportunity for those who wish to put their names in chat or otherwise write a message or here in house. I know that we have so much to share and hear from one another.